All right. So the real awards for TNA, not the worked awards, the real awards, millions and millions and millions of Brace for Impact fans voted on Patreon. I also put in the Voice of Wrestling Discord, and then I sent it out on Twitter, of course. And then my cousin Joe put it on Reddit. So yeah, millions and millions and millions of people voted. And the best match of the year, surprise, surprise, overwhelming. Because so when I put this like specifically, I didn't want to list. I didn't want to put my thumb on the scale, so I don't want to list a bunch of matches. So I just said, you guys just type, guys just write it in. So this was a write-in one on this one. And the winner was overwhelmingly Josh Alexander versus Will Ospreay from TNA Impact, January 14, 2024. So I thought this was going to be a tough one because people don't remember what happens in January. So it's usually like if you have like a great match and towards the end of the year, that's what's going to get it because it's like recency bias. But this one still held up, and I thought this was the best match of the year. I also thought that I thought that Moose versus Mike Bailey would actually get a lot more votes, but it did get a couple votes, but I thought it would actually like challenge this one because it was such a good match and it happened recently. And of course, Masha versus Jordan did get some votes. I thought that was a very good match. Also, Mike Bailey versus Zachary Wentz had a couple votes. And Mike Bailey versus Mustafa Ali actually got the second most votes. So, and I thought that match was tremendous too. So, Mike Bailey seems to be the common denominator here as far as like best wrestler. But the only match that really got any write-in votes, I thought that Josh versus Nemeth, the Iron Man match, would get more votes, and I thought that Josh versus what was Joe Hendry at Victory Road would actually get a lot more votes, but it really didn't do a lot of damage. But this one was like the overwhelming favorite was this match. It's one of my favorite TNA matches ever. It still holds up, and I think it was Billy in the chat that made the point that like, you know, even though Josh is likely leaving and Ospreay is, you know, in AEW, they still devoted some time on their TV show to give this match some love. And so, I mean, how could you not? It was great. Best male wrestler was surprise, Joe Hendry. He won the majority, clearly. That's why we're doing this, but he won the majority, but other people did get some votes. So it wasn't like the knockouts one where there was one clear favorite and everybody else is just eating for number two. But let's see. Joe Hendry won with 30.8% of the vote. And then Moose actually got 19% of the vote. And then 15% of the vote went to Speedball. And then 11% went to Nick Nemeth. So so he was the favorite, but there was other people that got some votes too, which I was surprised by that. I thought that it would be like a 90% thing for Joe Hendry, but no, actually some other people got some votes. Now you go to the knockouts division and Jordan Grace won with 92.3% of the vote. so here, like, look at that pie. Look at that pie. 92.3% of the vote. And there was just a couple of and so for this one, I made sure not to do write-ins because I thought it would get trolled. But a couple of like I think one person voted for Masha and then one person voted for Rosemary. And I only put their names on there so that way I just didn't like to call it the Jordan Grace Award. I wanted to have a couple of other options. So let's see. Yeah, so Jordan Grace won knockout of the year. Best pay-per-view of the year was an actual tie between Slammiversary and Bound for Glory. And so I'm not doing a tiebreaker. So yeah, they both got 38.5% of the vote. So there you go. Rebellion got 3.8% of the vote and Hard to Kill got 7%. So while Hard to Kill was the highest grossing event in the company history, um, the two that the fan base really liked the most were Slammiversary and Bound for Glory. And I personally picked Slammiversary as my favorite, like my vote, and I did vote. I voted for Slammiversary, but if you said you liked Bound for Glory better, I'm not going to argue that either. I thought that was really good. And in fact, I think if I went back and rewatched both of them, I might have, a different one. With Bound for Glory, I was just so disappointed in the Hendry versus Nemeth match. Like that match was just so bad. And that's the world title match. And it's the co-main event. And the match was just awful. I just couldn't vote for Bound for Glory, even though I really liked the show. And I thought the main event, the Full Metal Mayhem match, dragged. It ended well with, you got Jeff almost killing himself and you got the big pop at the end. It was like watching Freddie Freeman hit a grand slam home run in the bottom of the ninth, or an extra innings, in the World Series. It was like that pop. But leading up to there were so many spots that just dragged because it took them so long to set up spots. And then Jeff Hardy tried to do his chair slide down the ladder and that failed. It was a really sloppy match, but it ended up being really fun. It ended up being good. But yeah, let's see. Best TNA Plus special. I'm not Victory Road from September 13th, 2024. That was my vote. That was my favorite of the year. I thought this was probably, as far as TNA Plus specials go, it was the strongest year in the history of the company. It was really, really good year for TNA Plus specials. And Victory Road, I'll be honest, going into Victory Road, I was not excited about that card. I thought it was like, we just got a Nemeth and Moose rematch, contractually obligated rematch. And then, Hendry versus Josh Alexander. And it felt like a lot of matches just thrown together and nothing really the only good story was Josh and Joe. And it turned out to be excellent. I thought that show was fantastic. And that was the first show that I was watching. And I was like, if they pitch this show to TV execs, I think they got something. I do. I think that they could probably get something. I remember saying after that show that it was so aesthetically pleasing that if they shop that around to TV execs, they could be like, this is what we look like now. I could see a TV exec being like, I think we could bring these guys on. Right. The best new. So I put the best new and returning. It was best new and returning TNA wrestler. And Nick Nemeth actually edged out Mike Santana. But Nick Nemeth was the world champion for most of the year. So he split time with Moose. So the first half was Moose and the second half was Nemeth. So Billy says, and Victory Road had a title change. What was the title change on Victory Road? Now you got, I can't remember. Because Slammiversary is where Nemeth won the world title, and then he defended it against Moose, and he retained. Speedball versus is that where Speedball got his title win? Yeah, Bailey beat Wentz. Yeah, that's right. Bailey beat Wentz, and that match was fantastic. So, because that was so funny, because Bailey was the champion going into Emergence. Zach Wentz wins the title in Ultimate X. He takes the belt with him to NXT, defeats Dez or Wesley or whatever you want to call him, and he comes back and immediately loses at the Speedball in one of the greatest matches in TNA history. I think that one should have got more votes because that match was so good. It was and it was unexpectedly amazing. I knew that it was going to be really good, but I didn't expect it to be one of the greatest matches in TNA history, right? But yeah, so back to the best new TNA wrestler. Nick Nemeth was the best new TNA wrestler. He edged out Mike Santana, and I put new and returning. So what I meant was like newest signing or whatever. But I put signing in quotes because Nemeth technically isn't signed to the company. He's a freelancer, but he's been here since, Hard to Kill last year. So he took it, and I think that I don't disagree with that. I picked Mike Santana. I just thought Mike Santana had a really strong year and has really turned himself into a main event act, whereas before he was always seen as a tag team guy. And in fact, when he left AEW, he was taking a lot of heat from the AEW audience, like, hold the tag rope, bitch. It's like, no, fuck you. He's Mike freaking Santana. He didn't have to hold the tag rope. He's a main eventer. And he's come into TNA and he's turned himself into a main event act. And so that's why I picked Mike Santana. But Nick Nemeth got the victory here, so I was outvoted. Most improved wrestler. I think it was almost a unanimous decision. Let me go back. Hold on just a second. My app screws up. Okay. So most improved wrestler with 68% of the vote went to AJ Francis. And we've all been tough on old AJ, but I do got to say that he has had a really good year. He really has. I think he turned a lot of people around on him. His contract came up in December, so we don't know that he's coming back. My prediction is that he will be back. I think that some of the leveling of the roster and getting rid of some of the old Scott D'Amore friend contracts, I think they're going to start pushing that money to other people. And I think AJ Francis will be one of those people. I think he'll be back, but he's had a really good year. And by the end of the year, he was in the main event of a TNA Plus special, and he didn't deliver a 5-star. That's not what he does, but he delivered a pretty good match. I think the booking of it was weird. Like, nobody believed he was going to win, so that's tough. So he went into the match knowing that nobody believed he was going to win, and still had a pretty good match. That's a difficult thing to do. So he held his own in there with Nick Nemeth, and I think he gained a lot of respect from that. And so I'll be curious. I'm pretty sure he's coming back. That's my prediction anyway, and I think that we'll probably see him in a lot of more bigger matches. I think he proved that he can go a little bit with that match. Okay. X Division Wrestler of the Year. It was close race between Speedball and Mustafa Ali, but Speedball took it with 34.6% of the vote. And I think an argument could be made for Mustafa Ali. I know I was making fun of the TNA that worked awards, but I think a good argument could be made for Mustafa Ali because he was in a lot of big matches as the X Division champion, and he co-headlined Slammiversary, which was the number 2 pay-per-view of the year, but it was in front of the largest live audience, and he co-headlined and he delivered. And I thought he turned a lot of people around on him too. He proved to me that he could be a main event act, and I thought he elevated that title. Speedball had the best matches though. Speedball had the Zach Wentz match. Speedball had the Moose match. The Ultimate X match. He just, like, every match he was in was always like pretty much match of the night. He always delivered. He had a really good match with the Mustafa Ali match. Obviously, was really good. He has like a random TNA Plus match with Trent Seven that was awesome, and like all of his TV matches were always really good. So I think Speedball, like, if you think of what the X Division is and what the X Division should be, you think of Speedball Mike Bailey, just like an excellent match division. I think Mustafa Ali turned the division into kind of like a world heavyweight title type of division, which I think is also good. I think that's fine. So I thought, and then Billy makes a point here, Bailey elevates everyone he wrestles. Yes. So I thought that he was tremendous all throughout the year. Tag team of the year, Hardy Boys. I thought I thought ABC would take this one, but no, Hardy Boys. But I mean, how can you argue against the Hardy Boys? I mean, they have elevated the company to a whole nother level. So they rejoined as a tag team back in June. They missed all of July because they went to Canada. So, but they got the big moment in the main event, like a tag team match main evented, which is the first time in forever. Their tag team match main evented a pay-per-view and a main evented Bound for Glory, and they delivered, and they are the number one act in the company right now. They're the most number one money drawing act in the company. with Joe Hendry being second, right? So you can't argue with the Hardy Boys. And of course, the best moment of the year was when Jeff Hardy returned to TNA. That got the biggest pop of the year, and I think that really, like, it was just the perfect stew of them getting everything right all at once, and then boom, next thing you know, we got some momentum. TNA becomes a movement, right? And people will start jumping on the TNA train. They start coming over from WWE. It's like, oh wow, look at what we got going on over here. I don't think that Jeff Hardy return can be understated. Just how like huge that was for the company. It was pretty significant. Best feud: Josh Alexander versus Steve Maclin. This one surprised me. I thought it was going to be Speedball versus Mustafa Ali. That's what I voted for. And surprisingly, my two favorite guys won. And surprisingly, I didn't vote for my two favorite guys. I liked the feud. I just thought like it kind of ended weird. Like they had the really good match at Bound for Glory. So I thought the original feud seemed like it was Josh versus Eric Young. And they did that match on TV, and then that led to Josh versus Steve Maclin. But really, it was a weird pivot to the feud. I didn't think the pivot was done very well, but I was happy that it happened. And of course, they delivered on the match. And I should never really understood why they were feuding, but they were feuding, and that's fine. And then they go to the match at Bound for Glory, and it's tremendous. And then they followed up with Turning Point, which was also a great match, but it was in front of kind of a weird crowd and like bad production and the poor lighting. Not many people watched it, and Maclin got his victory there. And now the feud has ultimately been dropped. Josh Alexander is going on to a bigger match, despite the fact that he lost to Maclin. So Alexander won the bigger match at Bound for Glory. He loses the lesser match at Turning Point. And now it looks like Steve Maclin's heading to a tag team match at Genesis, and Josh Alexander is getting the bigger match with Santana. He's getting the bigger spotlight, despite the fact that he lost the feud, even though it was their 1-1, essentially. For this current incarnation of the feud, they did have a match the previous year where Josh Alexander won, and so if you think about it, Alexander is kind of like ahead. So it was just weird that they ended it that way. So that's why I didn't pick it. I thought that the storyline between Mustafa Ali and Speedball I thought they did everything great. Like they hit all the different story beats, and then they ended it at the perfect time at Slammiversary. Speedball in front of his home crowd, getting the big victory there, and I think Ali made Speedball look like a major star. I did, but we went with Josh Alexander, Steve Maclin. So again, I didn't hate the feud. I thought it was good, but and I thought the matches were great. But that's what we did. So, and then the highlight of TNA, I didn't really count. I just wanted to talk about the different things that you guys pointed out and that I started the show with. Rebranded TNA, the bigger crowds, upgraded production, and momentum heading into 2025.